had a cousin who was doing an apprenticeship with one of the old school tattooers. So that was my first contact with tattooing, Back in the 90s, he had a Biomax sleeve. I think that was the first time I saw a full sleeve tattoo, and I was just blown away. So I got my first tattoo when I was 13. I think it was 1999. I was getting tattooed by this guy in Serangoon Shopping Centre, right? This guy called Stephen O. Dodgiest. Basically, he was in and out of prison, right? But he tattooed teenagers. So I went there, got tattooed by him a couple of times. I was sitting at the waiting area. I had a sling bag I drew an anarchy symbol. I drew the anarchy sign on it. So the guy next to me says, "Hey bro, you can really draw, huh?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And then the guy was like, "I'm starting tattooing and Steven's helping me, giving me advice and shit, right?" Immediately I was like, "Dude, if you can start, why can't I, right?" So I sat on the couch. He went to get tattooed and at the same time asked Steven for advice, right? I sat on the couch, and then that was the moment where I realized the 15-year-old me realized, hey look, I'm gonna get myself a machine, then I'm gonna tattoo my legs, and then I'm gonna tattoo friends, right? So being a teenager with a tattoo machine, I had loads of customers. Rosemar would come to my house with 15 skinheads. They're all 14, 15, 16-year-old kids, right? I would tattoo kids from the neighborhood. I would tattoo kids from school. Basically, I had so much work to do because every kid didn't have enough money to get proper tattoos, and they were all underage. So they all came to me, right? And I got to tattoo. I remember I could only tattoo after school or during the weekends, right? And during the weekends, I was tattooing so much. And guess what? Half of the tattoos I didn't stay because I didn't know how to assemble the machine correctly. I wasn't using a rubber band. I had no clue what the rubber band's for, right? Yeah. So I just threw the rubber band away. I had basically no knowledge whatsoever. Of course, I tried on myself, and the results was okay, right? So then I started tattooing people. So then I was doing that whole scratcher thing at home. I was still living with my parents. Thankfully, they were quite supportive because my dad has tattoos all over, right? So they were very, very open with tattooing. I guess they thought it was more of a hobby rather than a career choice, right? Even for me, I felt that it is a freaking hobby. It's not just a career, it's really, really something that I love to do, right? I was fortunate enough to start tattooing just out of curiosity rather than, planning like a career choice or taking tattooing as a job. Because I was staying with my parents, I didn't have to pay rent, didn't have to pay anything. So tattooing was just for fun. I would describe my style of tattooing as traditional inspired Japanese style. I don't do full-on traditional Japanese because I've never been through a proper apprenticeship in Japan. I always take this whole traditional thing, I take this traditional thing really, really seriously because I don't think you have the right to mess around with traditions if you're not from that land. I apply the traditional aesthetics as best as I can. I wouldn't consider myself like traditional Japanese tattooer. Like for me, the music and art and tattoos, they come hand in hand, right? Especially with punk music, hardcore music, But I don't think my style of tattooing is related to punk rock directly. If you were to ask me if getting into punk rock pushed me to want to start tattooing. I think it's like tattoos got me into the punk scene, and then the punk scene also encouraged tattooing. So it was like a loop, you know. I think I got into Japanese style after about 7-8 years of tattooing. Before that I did everything. Your tribal, your lower back tribal, your barbed wire armband. I wish I found my style earlier, but then again I wasn't confident enough technically to jump into Japanese style. For me to actually analyze what makes my customer choose my work, it's kind of difficult for me, you know, to analyze my own work, because I can be quite critical towards my own work sometimes. No matter what style, no matter what genre, it has to be visible. It has to last a lifetime. You can't give someone a tattoo that's going to fade in 5 years, in 10 years. What's the point in that? Like, what's the reason behind doing something on a client that's going to fade off in 10 years? To me, a good tattoo is something that will last a lifetime. You're not creating something for yourself. You're creating something for the two of you, like for yourself and the client. I'm really careful of what projects I take in, because I don't want to fuck up anything, you know. Like, if I'm not confident to do certain things that the client requests, I'll tell them that I'm not able to take in this project. Usually I prepare the stencil day before. If it's like, if I'm working on a back piece, stencil will be done the day before or a couple of days before. Check the size, make sure the client is feeling well, not too nervous, not too unsure. If I'm tattooing a first timer, if it's a guy or a girl getting a back piece as their first tattoo, right? Most times they are quite nervous. And they are not nervous not because of the design, not because of the environment. They're probably nervous because they don't know if they can take the pain, right? Usually I just talk them into like this mind over matter thing, or if they're really nervous, then I said, let's use numbing cream or let's use some painkillers. Yeah, and then I just try to assure them that tattooing is not going to kill them. It's going to hurt a lot, but you're not going to die from tattooing. So once they are settled, I put on the stencil and then we start. Once the foreground is tattooed, I would maybe just freehand the left part of the shoulder, left part of the ribs, and then start with the lines and do some shading. Then the next session I'm going to do the right side. So it's like section. But it really depends on what I want to do with the background. Let's say if the background has a lot of interactions with the foreground, then everything has to be drawn on the day itself, right? Say for example, foreground's here and then the background's overlapping the foreground, then that has to be drawn straight away. But if there's not so much interactions, then I section the drawing process. So let's say if I'm drawing the left part of the shoulder, maybe an hour and a half. One of my biggest inspiration would be Horikyo Sensei. He is one of my biggest inspiration because visually his work is just so freaking impactful. It's bold, strong. The client stands 10 meters away and you can see every single thing. You don't have to go really close and use a magnifying glass to look at the details, right? I mean, in his work there are some elements of it that are quite detailed, but overall, client with a bodysuit can stand 10 meters away and you can see every single thing really clearly. In every angle, any way the client is moving, you can see everything perfectly. He's one of my biggest influence, also because of the way he tattoos. Very, very true to the tradition. Everything is, he does all the color shading with Tebori, the hand poking. It's just amazing character. Really, really kind. Yeah, we spent a bit of time together. And although it was just a short time, it was really, really impactful to my career. Because, you know, these days, right, how tattooers, how they get influenced is by what they see on social media. So for me to actually be there, spending time with like a living legend, entirely different from scrolling through Instagram and scrolling through Facebook, right? You can feel his aura. Yeah, it's just so much more personal and impactful because he's so humble. He lives a really, really simple life. Yeah, he's just humble, kind, and he does kick-ass work. My name is Shane. I tattoo at Feather Cloud Tattoo at 267 Vijour.